Hello and welcome to Pickle's Garage. Today we're going to be working on the 1993 Z28 Camaro. There's going to be a couple things that we're going to be looking into, all located in the steering column. So I'm going to go over in detail how to access a lot of the internal components behind the steering wheel. I'm going to mostly be working on my shifter not really working, being pretty loose, seeing if I can fix that. So first step, arguably most important, we're going to be disconnecting the negative side of the battery just because we are going to be working with the airbag, getting that removed and disconnected. Also, tons of electronic components. Anytime you're working with electronics, you should go ahead and remove that negative side. Maybe put a rag here just so it doesn't reconnect. This is a 5/16. We're going to go ahead and pop that off and go back to the wheel. Now, unfortunately, much of this repair does have specialty tools. You'll see that there are 4 of these. Trying to get a better lighting angle. But anyways, there's 4 of these sort of Torx head, and they have something in the center of them, and so it is a specialty version. I'll show you that here shortly. So they have these kits fairly easy to find online that just has a variety of different Torx heads and hexagons and whatnot that you'll need. This is the specific one that fits. Like I said, it has that sort of circle that allows it to go further in, and it's just this shape. It's the T27 for this specific one. So this will be the first sort of specialty tool that we'll need. We'll have 4. It'll just be 1, 2, 3, 4 on the reverse side. We'll get those removed, and that will be able to remove this. So this will now come forward. You'll see that the 4 screws stay in place. It eventually will just get loose enough where this is able to pull out a little bit. These are actually your horn components on the side here. And so I'll show you a little bit more of that, but if your horn is having issues, then it's right there. We're going to go ahead and disconnect the airbag. It's just got this little safety tab here. And so let me try and do it with, let me do it with 2 hands, and then I'll show you how to do it. So as you saw, this blue tab was sitting at the top. This will pull forward and it releases from it, and then you'll push this down and then slide it out. So you'll just push it underneath that bar and then it slides apart. So as mentioned, here are the horn components. So as the metal pieces make contact, it sends your signal, and that's how your horn works. But I don't have any need to take this apart further, one on each side, but if that is what you're replacing, that is where you'd go from there. So now we're gonna go ahead and take off the steering wheel, and that is going to be the next specialty tool. You'll see mine has a blue marking here. It is important not to over tighten this, so this is good to keep in mind that this is where that sort of mark was when it was completely snug. So let me show you that specialty tool right now. Okay, so with the removal of this, it's actually very similar to a lot of vehicles. A lot of vehicles do it just like this. And so essentially what you're going to be doing is you're going to be removing this nut, which is size 22 is probably the closest, and you'll see that there's 2 holes here. You'll go ahead and find a kit like this. You can buy these fairly cheap online. You can also rent them, but if you are going to rent it, make sure you have something that looks like this in the kit. The reason being is that is actually a separate tool that you will need for this specific repair. But essentially, you're going to find the bolt sizes that fits in these 2 holes, right? And then you're going to get these threaded, and I'll show you once I have the hole set up, but you'll get these threaded after this nut is removed, and then you're going to be using this tool, and as you crank it, it is going to pull the wheel off of the column. So let me get it set up, and then I will show you. Alright, so here's the setup with the nut removed. Found the 2 bolts that worked best. You're going to try and make sure these are as even as possible. These were size 12 for me. It wasn't quite the half that this is, though I feel like they were supposed to be the same size. Mine just worked better with 12. But you'll have a half socket on this, And all you're going to do is just with a standard ratchet, you're just going to slowly turn it. You'll feel some tension. Usually it's a somewhat sudden kind of, and then the rest of it's really easy. So I'll probably need 2 hands to get it where I want it, but essentially you're just cranking this away and it's going to be pulling the steering wheel off that little housing right there. Alright, so I'm just going to keep twisting this, and you can see it just dropped a little there. So it's going to come off my hand here. It's going to have some stuff come with it, and we're going to be able to set this aside. And now we have exposure to this. So here's the back side. You'll see that there's a spring here, and everything came with mine. This is usually horn related, and it's just going right into that housing. So just when you're reassembling it, make sure that this goes right back where it was. There is a notice here, you can go ahead and read it. It's basically just about making sure that everything looks like it did when you removed it. So just keep in mind where everything is at and put everything where it was. So take a picture of it. It's usually the easiest. Have a reference point, and then I'm going to go ahead and get this removed, and I will show you the next stage. So you'll see this clip here. They're kind of a pain in the butt. I actually bought a specific tool from Craftsman online, but these actually were too big and it didn't fit in the holes, so I had to do the tried and true. Basically, you just take a screwdriver in the open bit and you kind of twist it open, right? And then you'll use a different smaller screwdriver like this, and then you'll just sort of pry it underneath, and then you just got to kind of walk it around and walk it out. So like I said, you just put a screwdriver in the middle of that, twist it, opens it up a little bit, and then you just get a screwdriver to walk it around. It's kind of a pain. If you can find these tools, I think that would make it a lot easier, just because it goes in each of these 2 holes and opens it up. But the one I got was too big, and this is Craftsman, so just don't get this one. Look for the next. Now this assembly will start coming off, so I'm going to go ahead and get this set up for removal. Okay, so this will pull straight out. It will have your wire here for your airbag, so that will just kind of slide along the column. I'm going to leave this hanging here. This is actually the plate that you need that other tool that I had mentioned. So essentially all this does is it locks your steering wheel in place, and so this plate needs to be depressed in order to get to, and let me get this off, this washer, in order to get to that C-clamp there. And so we need to take the tension off, and then we can go ahead and open that ring up more and get this the rest of the way off. So I'm going to go ahead and set it up and show you what it looks like. So if your kit is like mine, it'll have the option between this one and the one that I have on it. And so you'll just twist this onto where your steering wheel was, and then you'll go ahead and put your arch here, washer, and then that is size 22. And so all we're doing is we're tightening it enough so that the ring doesn't have any pressure on it, and then we can go ahead and slide it off with a screwdriver. So it is a bit of a pain. Usually what I do is I'll push down with a smaller screwdriver towards the top, and I'll push down to get underneath it, and then once I'm able to lift it up a little bit, I'll use a larger screwdriver to pry it against this to try and flick it up. There's actually 2 grooves, one right there that it clicks into eventually, and so it's good once you get the first one off to try and go really fast over the second one, so then you don't spend too much time trying to pry it. But you can see it's all bent out of shape. I was working it for quite a while, but it'll still work. Like I said, just kind of try and pry underneath it just to open it up, and then just use another one to try and jimmy it out. So now that this is removed, then we'll start removing the rest of it here. So I have this removed, and I know that the wheel lock is just going to be this hole right here, so I kept a mental note of it. Took a picture obviously through the video, but I removed this as well and I just put it where it's supposed to be. I'm just going to set this aside so that way I know where to put it back. And then this is actually going to be your assembly for your blinker. So it kind of has the cancellation features right there. So a lot of the time some of this plastic parts will break, or this will disconnect, or this spring will break. So this would be the point where you can start to remove pieces here to fix it. And so I'm going to get this removed just because I'm going to go further into it to address the wheel kind of dropping like I showed. But this actually looks pretty promising. I'm probably just going to grease this up just so that it moves a little bit smoother. And I'll see if I can take the slop out of it. But this looks pretty good. But I'm going to go ahead and remove some of these screws. There's also going to be your hazard right here. That's just a regular screw as well, Phillips, and that just comes off, and that'll allow you to take more of these pieces out. So you'll have the bar here, and that is what connects your actual indicator to this. And then if you actually have it shifted to the right, before you start taking this off, you'll have access to these 3 screws, which should, I'm probably going to need an extra hand, but it should remove, yeah, see how loose it is? This will now come out, so let me grab that real quick. So this is now all loose, however, the wires that are behind it are holding it in place. So what I'm going to do is, rather than yanking on it and potentially breaking something, I'm going to go ahead and remove this bottom panel. It's just got a series of screws, and that'll help me guide the wires back up through, and then I'll get enough leash here and I'll be able to get to the part I'm looking for. So it's just going to be 2 screws towards the top here, and then the bottom is going to have 2 bolts, which are 9/32, I believe. Yes. And then you get all this exposure now. It is just kind of friction held after you get rid of those four different screws and whatnot. And so you just have to be careful that you don't pull too hard on that wire, but it should have enough leash to get out. And so now we have all of the cables back here that are feeding back up into the column. So we're going to be able to kind of help it along here and get a little extra room. So I went ahead and disconnected this part. Mine broke a little bit just because it is old plastic, but basically this part just lifts up a little bit and then it'll slide back. The other part here, this lower part, is only held on with these plastic retaining clip sort of things. Mine were super beat up, so I'm probably going to replace them anyways. But if you have a tool similar to this, it makes it a little easier. So now we have access back here to, let's see if I can get a good angle on it. So basically all we're doing is there's going to be a bracket on there. Hopefully the camera showed. But there's going to be a bracket that we're going to lift up on, and that will give us a little bit more leash to pull this just a little bit out of the way. It doesn't have to go too far, but it's connected, friction held down there currently. Okay, so a little bit better of an angle right there. We're going to be kind of lifting that up, and that will help give us the leash we need. So if you are curious which one it is, you'll see on the back of that plate, they'll have these like green and brown wires. And so at the bottom of your screen, this whole section is what we're going to be giving some extra room. So we might unclip the top bit, and then we're gonna remove from the column that lower part on your screen. All right, so you don't get a lot, but you do get enough. So this is now more or less out of the way. Like I said, you just set there's like a tab at the bottom, you just have to kind of push up with your thumb. But now we have access to what I'm going to be focused on. So like I said, there's a few different things you can replace and repair throughout this process. Now you have enough exposure with this pulled forward to disconnect it completely if you want to replace all of this assembly. Okay, so we do have our hazard back in place. The screw in there. I also reconnected the 3 screws right there. So now this is all back in place. One of the next things I'm going to do is I'm going to reconnect that arm that had my blinker here. You will notice that there's a sort of grease here from the factory, and it is important to make sure that that does stay at least mildly lubricated, just so you don't have that friction or get dirt, grease, or whatever, or just dirt rather, in place and messing with it. So what you can get is Permatex has dielectric grease. You don't need a lot, you just need a little bit. I'm going to put a little bit on this back component, and I'm going to put a little bit up front, and then I'm going to reassemble those metal bits that were right here, and then you will see the next stage. Okay, so it might help with pliers, but I just did this back one first and just got it each on the arms right, and then you'll just put this bigger one on the tab underneath. And I found it kind of helped to push it down with one finger and then use pliers to pull this up and then get it clipped on. And then that you're just going to make sure that you get a little bit of grease on the arm here as it goes down in, right, and get it screwed in, and give it a test before you button it all back up. Feels nice and smooth. So now we'll go on to the next bit. So now we've replaced this, and make sure that you put your cam before you put the plate back on, and line it up with where it left off. Like I said, take a picture or just reference. It should, for the most part, only go one way, so you should be fine there, but I always just take a picture just in case. So now you're going to have the opposite issue that you had taking it off, getting this ring back on, because like I said, there is a channel right here that it'll want to see into, but you need to get it all the way back here. Now, for the most part, this should be pressed enough to almost be able to just get this ring back without having to put the tool on, but I'm still going to put the tool on just out of habit. Just make sure you put the ring first. I'm going to work it. I'll try and lift and keep it at an angle like this. So as I go over that first bit, it goes to the second. Okay, so snap ring is back in place. I put on the washer here. I'm going to put this back in place, and then I'll probably pull on the wire down there just to get it snug, and then I'm going to go ahead and place this back on. Alright, ring is in place. Just make sure everything's aligned. You'll notice there's kind of a nub here that goes between those two fittings, and then just line up this yellow bit. But we're going to go ahead and put the steering wheel back on. Don't forget that spring part is now going to go in through that hole. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap here. So I've reconnected the airbag. This was a 22. Just get it real nice and snug. Don't try and break anything, but you definitely don't want that to be too loose. Make sure you line that back up into the hole. But like I said, we just reconnected our airbag, slid in that plastic part first, the yellow, and then you just put the blue tab, and it just slides along this way until it clicks into place. And now we're going to reconnect the 4 Torx screws once I have this all lined up, and then we're going to reconnect our battery, and then that's it. So thank you very much for watching. Have a great rest of your day. Feel free to like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.